something that we read about in chapter 1, teeth. It'll be your study guide because we're going to review the 4 subfields of anthropology and how they might study teeth. Here we have, in order, filed teeth. You can see they're a little pointier, darkened teeth, and then something that somebody in the Nakirema did, American style teeth. So we read in the Nakirema how our society is somehow fascinated with mouth and teeth and stuff like that, but we're not the only ones. People all over the world are interested in what you can do with teeth as a means of symbolic communication, because teeth are never just teeth. We manipulate them in different ways, and we've been doing this for thousands of years in some cases. Maybe not this stuff. Well, probably that stuff too. Yeah, sure. So, in cultural anthropology, we might talk about the ways in which we can manipulate our teeth or use our teeth to communicate social meanings. They stand for things. They can even be an indication of social hierarchy. Who can afford to get proper dental care and get their teeth all straightened out and get their mouth all smelling nice so you can get a good job and be a part of society, and who is unable to do that. So they can indicate social inequality within a place as well as different meanings across society. For linguistic anthropology, we use our teeth to create different sounds. And in some languages, these can be quite important to have or not have, because the sounds that you would make with your tongue against your teeth or withdrawn from your teeth are different, or there might be certain kinds of hissing or sucking sounds which you need, or you use your teeth in certain ways. So linguistic anthropologies also might be concerned with how teeth influence language use and are used with sounds and social meaning. In archaeology, a lot of archaeologists look at teeth and dental patterns, in part because some of the customs we have about modifying teeth also show up in past societies as well. But they also can tell us about what people were maybe eating, what their health care might have been like, how people treated their teeth. And we'll be talking a lot about teeth when it comes to biological anthropology. The thing is that over time, teeth preserve the best out of the whole skeleton of these other primates. So there are, for example, we'll talk about the primate Gigantopithecus, which was a huge primate. But the thing is, we don't actually have skeletons. Apparently, the porcupines ate all the skeletons of the Gigantopithecus. We have the teeth. And we've been able to deduce a lot from the teeth, obviously, but that's what's often preserved the best in some sort of situation. So we will be talking a lot about teeth in biological anthropology for all the reasons you've listed and just because they are there. Now, the third part, teeth part 3, has to do with something that we might talk about as improving anthropological practice as well. Your text talks about how the Dinka and the Nuer people from what is now Sudan had a practice in which they would remove some of their permanent front teeth as part of their coming of age rituals. Now, the Nuer and the Dinka were some of the most anthropologically studied people, some of the more famous anthropological works, especially by the Brits, because this place was ruled by British colonialism in Africa, in Sudan. And so the UK anthropologists, the British anthropologists went there. But in some of these groups, as we talked about coming of age in Samoa, during adolescence or early adolescence, they would remove some of these permanent front teeth. And this was known as the gap. And it meant it gave you a social identity. It was important for your ethnicity. And it seems like this has been something, archaeologically speaking, that people did as early as 15,000 years ago. So it's a pretty old tradition. And the food in this area is pretty soft. So some of these permanent front teeth didn't matter so much. And the language, it was something that you could perhaps even do better without some of these permanent front teeth. But as your book describes, once some of these Sudanese came to the United States as refugees, they started to want what they called missing teeth. Now, Sudan is one of the saddest areas of the world in this very moment. It is engulfed in a civil war, which is one of the most intense conflicts of our time. And this has been true for a number of years. And so there is a Sudanese refugee community in the United States. And some of them who belong to maybe the Dinka or the Nuer realized that if they were going to make new lives here, that having a tooth gap was perhaps going to, one, then they wouldn't be able to fit in because you had missing teeth. It apparently made it more difficult to speak English because you needed those teeth in the front to pronounce some of the English words. And also some US food tends to be, I don't know, hamburgery or something. You need to chew it in a different way. And so in an instance of applied anthropology, our anthropologists argued that, in fact, in order to make people's lives better, getting dental implants wasn't just a looking good or an aesthetic thing. It was an important part of integration into a new home. I was looking around on the internet for a picture of these missing teeth or a teeth gap. And I actually found this picture from a website or a blog site that's called the People of Praise out of Portland, Oregon. This was from 2016 of someone who was from Sudan, but is a Christian and is involved in a Christian community. And you can see here that being a refugee, but also being a member of a church and the Christian faith. And there you can see that tooth gap. In this case, she didn't perhaps want to get them filled. And you can see with some of the kids, though, that the kids are probably not raised in the old tradition, and so they're not going to have a tooth gap because they wouldn't have their teeth pulled. And so this was a very, in some ways, heartwarming story of a group of Christians who work with refugees. And as Jesus said, we should care for the stranger because we were once strangers in the land of Egypt. So the idea is that you take in people who might be suffering and in different places. And there's one of her daughters in some school in Portland, Oregon. Of course, that was 2016. We may be aware that all those there are people in Sudanese who might be refugees, that basically the refugees program has, for the most part, been canceled. And some of these Christians that were working with refugees are closing down their programs because what are you going to do? Can't do them. There aren't that many refugees to take care of. And so I say that because in some ways we need an anthropology. This was a heartwarming story of applied anthropology, but we do have to be aware of the political realities of our time. So how many Sudanese refugees do you know? Yeah, we're talking about 0.0002% of the US population, or put differently, out of every 10,000 people in the United States, maybe one or two people. So yeah, it's not overwhelming anybody to have a couple Sudanese refugees. And as you may have noticed from the Super Bowl, these struggles are actually in some ways linked together because these are some of the areas of the world in which people are being thrown out of their places. And this is probably an example, I think, of a good way to do anthropology in an artistic way in today's world.